Welcome back to Buggeray, and we're back with another live coding session with Angular Reactive Forms. So I'll be running through a short demonstration of how the end product of this coding stream will look like. So yeah, what you'll have is this job application forms. The user will then click on their name. If they click away, it will ask them to please enter their name, right? And this is Sibonelo Vilagazi. Say now they enter their email, right? But it's not valid. It will say please enter a valid email, and they'll need that, right? And if they enter their ID, right? And they can also enter their address. I'll just say South Africa. But if they don't have that, and that will say please enter a valid address. So yeah, with that being said, then after they can do the click for the submit, it will send them to this congratulation page, and they can click back to home to go back to the form. With all that being said, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get to work. Alright, so before we get started, I want to highlight something that in this video, since we'll be dealing with reactive forms to handle form validation for this job application, I don't know if that makes sense, but so in this video, I won't be focusing on building the front end of this application, but I'll firstly walk through on the routing, which is the app.routing modules, on how I route to the two different pages. But I'll also leave a link to the Git repository so that you can see the code. And yeah, so let's go to the routing module. Yeah, I explained a lot. So let's go to the routing module. So here we've got this path. An empty path which will send us to this job application, and a congrats path which will send us to this congratulation page component. So what we have in the application will have this empty path which sends us to this job application. Then if we go to the congrats page, this will say congratulations. Okay, yeah, so that's what you have. So then another thing is since we're dealing with reactive forms, so we'd want to handle like some form validation for this job application, right? So what we'll need is to have a public job form. So we want to have a public job form, which is a form group, right? It's a form group now equals to a new that's a new form group, right? So that's an object, right? So that will have a field called name, which is also a new form controller, right? So the first argument I'll pass in is empty, because I want it to be like an empty I want it to be like an empty string. And then you can also pass in this validators, right? Dot required, because I want the user to actually input a specific value to that name, right? So when we come here, right, in order for us to activate this form group, right, to use that in our form, we'll need to say form form group, right, and then equate that to this job form, right? This is a job form. But now we see that we get this error is because now we're using reactive forms, but we didn't import that into our app.modules. So we need to come to our app.modules, and then we import reactive form modules, right? And then if we've done that, then that error will be cleared off, right? So first and foremost, I would want to just output an error, right? So in a p tag, I'll say error slash message. So I've got this CSS class, right? So please enter your name, right? and then we have that, right? But now we want to a user to actually like validate if a name is entered or not. So what I like to do is have this method, right, which will then check in for all fields in this form groups object, right? So this method would be like validate input, right? This would be a validate input method, which is a name and takes in any, right? And then here I'll return this dot job form dot, and then I would want to say get, right, the name. So which is like the name will be like a field that I'll pass in, so it would be name or email or ID, something like that. And then I'll say valid, right? But now I want to check if it's not valid, right? And I need to pass in that. Right, so I'll then come back here and have an if check, right? So ngif, right? That says validate input, right? And pass in my name, right? So what will happen, this application will check is my name actually valid, right? Meaning that have I entered the required field. In this instance, I haven't entered, so it's saying please enter your name. And then when I start entering my name, that error gets cleared off, right? But we don't want our form to actually load an error upon us like coming or firstly loading into the screen, because our users might think that this website is a bit dodgy. But so what we'll need to check is the input actually dirty, and then if it's dirty, then display this error, right? So how we go about doing that is have this this dot job, right, form dot get. We want to get the name, and then we want to see if it's touched, if this input field has been touched or not, right? So in that instance, when we come here, right, we don't have an error message. But if we click on that input and click away, that input field or input box is now dirty, right? And this will say please enter your name, right? That's a good sign. But now if we enter our name, right, and click away, then we don't have an error message. So if we reload that and we enter our name and click away, we don't have an error message. So we'd want to do that for the other actual fields, right? Or inputs, should I rather say, right? So what we'll need to have is surname, email, and ID, right? So in this instance, we'd want to have a surname, right, which will pass in a new form controller, right, which will have a required field. We want this to be validators dot, this is required, right? This validators is required, and then we want to say the email, right? New form controller, and then we'd want to say having, because this also takes in like an array, can have an array of validators, right? This is required as well. And then we'd want to say probably like the ID number, which is also a new form control, right, which will start off as that. And then this will say validators dot, this is required, right? And yeah, that it is what it is. So what we'll need to then have is okay, those fields are required. So now we can go to our HTML file, right? We can copy this and have it here and say pass in surname instead. Surname, right? Please enter your surname. Note, this surname here are actually these fields. So this is name, surname, email, and ID number. So we'll have that copied again, and then here we'll say email. Please enter a valid email, right? And then another one here will be your ID number. Please enter a valid ID number. Alright, so if the user has to touch this, touch away, touch that, touch away, touch that, touch away, touch that, touch away. Oh, surname. Did I say surname somewhere? Surname, did I spell it right there? Oh, sorry. The mistake that I made is actually here. I didn't actually pass in this form controls, right? So here I'll need to say a form control name. I'll need to pass in this form control name and also call it that form control name, which is stated here. So for the second one, I'll have surname as the form control, right? Third one is email as that form control. That one is ID as that form control, right? ID number, let's see, ID number is required, right? Let's see now. Let's see. Yeah, so all of them are getting validated. So what I would like to do is now take this guy out and put it in this outer div, because now I'll also need I'll also need a validator for this email, the address I meant to say. So I'll put it in here, right? And then here I'll have this form control name, which will be address, right? Then I'll have this address which will come over here, right? And then I'll have new form that, and then validators dot required, right? So this is actually required. So now what I need to now do is test if this works, right? So the user enters their name, right? I even spelled my name wrong, right? Say now they didn't enter, and then they enter again. Say they didn't enter, now they enter that, right? Say they didn't enter, and now they enter that. And say they didn't enter. Man, this is email address. So form control, where does that end? So that's the form control, that's an address, and the address is required. Oh, I didn't put in like an error message here. So the error message should come here and say that please enter your address. Right, and that should take address, right? Yeah, and that should take address. So if I click there, click away, please enter your address. But we see now an issue here on the email is that if I enter something like that and click away, I'm not getting an error, but this is actually not a valid email. So what I will need to do in that instance is come to this email controller, right, form control, and have a validator which is of type email. So now if I just enter my name, which is not a valid email, I should get an error. Please enter a valid email. So I need to say @gmail.com, right, or have an @ sign for that to work, right? And now I don't have an error there, and then can click away, can sort that out. Now we see that this is working. New York, well, let me just say South Africa, because I'm a South African. Africa, right? And then now we still have another issue over there in terms of the ID itself. So we want the user, we know that our ID consists of numbers. So I would want to then create a method that will have a regular expression and handle that for us, right? So this will be validate your ID or ID validator. Yeah, I'll just call it that. And then here I'll pass in like an event, right? An event which is of type any, and then come here to this HTML class and file, I meant to say, and take in a key pressed. This will now pass into this ID validator, right? And this will pass in an event. Did I spell that wrong? Okay, can take it as it is, copy that, paste it here. Okay, we see now that's fine, right? And then what we need to do is we can just console it for now and just get the event dot key code, right? We want to check in the key code. Let's see. So if the user types in something, we see now there's like specific key codes to that. But now we would want to say, okay, let's have a variable called value, and this variable will take in this key code, right? Key code. And then we would want to now display this value, right? So in that instance, we'll still have the same thing, right? But these numbers don't make sense to us. We want to see actual characters. So what we'll do, we'll say string dot character from character, right? And then we'll pass in this key code, right? So if now the user types in something, now we see what's the actual character that's getting passed there, right? So now what we then want to do is have like a regular expression. So with this sorry for that, with this we'll have a regex, right, which will be a new regular expression, and this will take in, because we wanted to only take in numbers, because we know that our ID only consists of numbers, right? So we'll have an if check that says, is this the regex, and then we'll test it upon we'll test this value if this value only accepts numbers, right? So that this value only accepts numbers. So we want to say if this is an actual number, then just return something, else then just return false. Return false, right? And then after that we can test it. So now when I try to input letters, right, I can't actually do anything, but when I try to input numbers, then I can get something into that input. But when I click away, it will say your ID is invalid, right? So moving forth to the next thing, so you can add in another validator here, right, which is like from the validators, and then you can have max length, right? And then actually the min length, you'd want to say min length is actually equal to 16, right? Yeah, you can have that, saying that like your minimum length should be like 16 characters, right? Sorry for that. So if I input something, click away, it will say enter a valid one until I reach 16. So I guess I can also say maximum length here and just make it 16, so that when I get to 16 I can't type more, right? So it'll end there, right? So you will have your ID now set up there. Let me breathe a bit. Let's hope I'm not going fast for y'all. Right, so now we can now close that console. So let's refresh this and enter some stuff. So Sibonelo, Vilakazi, Sibonelo, a valid one, .com. Just enter ones until 16. South Africa, right? But now we've entered everything, but if we have an error, we can still click that button, and which is something we don't want. So for instance, before I actually test that, I want to redirect upon clicking, right? So if we click, we want to redirect, right, this to congrats page, right? So I would want to copy this method, right, put it here in our TS so that I can like redirect to another page, right? But before I can redirect, I need to have like a router. So I'll have a private router, which is of the router of the class router. So I'll then now have this dot router dot navigate, right? So this will navigate me to my congrats page, right? So if I click on this, what did I do wrong now? Oh, I didn't save that. So if I click on this, this should send me to my congrats page, but we see that this is wrong because I haven't filled in everything that's required, because basically I've got errors. So I shouldn't be able to go to the next page if I've got errors, right? So how I will go about fixing that is by disabling the click functionality if the actual form itself is not valid for the user to actually submit something. So in that instance, I'll have this disabled. Right, this busted should be disabled if the job form, right, dot valid, right, if it's not valid. So this will check that if this whole form group is not valid, then just disable the button. So now I can't go to the next page. So if I have Simonello, that, and then I have that, right, South Africa, and then I see that, well, what's going on? Actually need to go somewhere. I still can't click that. And if I have that at Gmail, right, .com, now I can only click that button and submit and go to the next page. So now that's done, right? So say that now I just want to go back to the home page. I can go to this congratulations page, right? I could add in here private router, right? And then I could have a router, right? And then here I can have like a redirect back page. This is gonna take this dot router dot navigate by ID, and this will send me back to that, I guess. But you could also have that redirect stuff down here, right, where you would have like the router link to that done on this click, but I just like doing it in a method, right? So what I'll say is redirect back, and yeah, that's what I need. Did I spell that right? Oh, redirect back to the back link, and yeah, so if I click there, I'll go back to that form and Sibonello, and then if I just remove everything, then I just can't go anywhere. Yeah, so if I click that, my name, surname, email, this is just a dummy email. Oh, this is bugarray@gmail.com, right? And that will be our ID, right? And this will be South Africa. And then if I click submit, this will say congratulations, you sorry, let me fix that for y'all. Your application has been processed. Is that how you spell processed? Pro Oh, your application. Okay. So let's try that again. Sibonelo Vilagazi at gmail.com. That will be that, right? And this is South Africa. So this is not 16. And then, yeah. So if I click on that submit button, this will say congratulations. Um, your application has been processed to the bug array team. So, with that all been said, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.